More than 3 million people are being taken to court over the ability to unable to pay back their council tax. We're going to have a look at this exclusive from iNews, guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, guys, wherever you are in the world. This is REGANELITE here. There's an exclusive from iNews. It's not a nice one either, guys, but we've got to talk about it. It keeps you up at night. More than 3 million taken to court unable to pay their council tax. Obviously, with the cost of living crisis and people being unable to pay certain bills, it's becoming quite desperate for certain councils who have to keep up with their budgets. This is a very difficult and delicate situation, but it's frustrating to say the least, guys. But let's dive into it. So magistrate courts have been granting debt orders to councils at a rate of more than 4,500 a day since April 2021 as the cost of living crisis spirals. 4,500 a day. More than 3 million people have been taken to court for council tax debt in some of the poorest parts of the country in the past 2 years, the eye can reveal. Since COVID, magistrate courts across England have handed out the equivalent of more than 4,500 debt orders a day in what campaigners said is the latest illustration of the scale of the cost of living crisis. Figures obtained by the Freedom of Information request shows there has been a rise in local authorities taking legal action against people who haven't paid their bills as coronavirus restrictions ended and inflation begins to soar. Since April 2021, at least 3.3 million liability orders have been granted by magistrate courts, which give councils wide-ranging powers to recover a debt, including the ability to send in bailiffs, deduct money wages directly from wages or benefits, force the sale of a home, or even having a debtor sent to prison. A similar analysis of data carried out by the charity Citizens Advice for 2018-2019 found councils were granting 2.3 million liability orders. 2.3 million of them. That's insane. In response to the EI's figures, a spokesperson for the government said councils need to be sympathetic to those in genuine hardship and always be proportionate on how they collect outstanding council tax. For much of 2020, courts stopped issuing liability orders due to pandemic rules, but in the past 2 years have ramped up as families struggled to make ends meet. Meanwhile, local authorities are also battling to balance the books due to spiraling inflation and cuts from funding from central government. Yeah, so they've had obviously the cuts from central government, which meant that it's even harder for them to pay for their usual stuff. So they're in a difficult situation, councils here. So here, I don't know if you guys can see clearly, but I'll read out some of it. So it's the rising level of council tax debt. This is the total number of liability orders granted. So the 10 lowest here, Tunbridge Wells with a total of 175 orders for a population of 1,115, 0.2%. Oakbury and Winston, 323, 0.6%. Rydesdale, 555 with a percentage of 1%. North Warwickshire, 733 with 1.1%. Whelan there, 1,942 with 1.2%. West Berks, 2,117 but with 1.3%. Bexley there, 3,487. Bexley is a very rich area, in case you guys are wondering. 1.4%. Tundridge, 1,559 with 1.8%. Milton Keynes, 5,202 with 1.8%. And Waverley 2,600 with 2% there, guys. It's insane numbers. And here are the 10 highest, guys. Starting with Humbury, 27,000 liability orders granted, with a population of 82,000, 33.7%. Middlesbrough, 28,000 with a population of 143,000, 19.5%. Salford with 50,000, over 50,000 liability orders, guys, with a population of 269,000, 18.7% of liability orders have been granted. Westminster, 37,978 with a population of 204,000, 18.6%. Redcar and Cleveland, 24,674. That's liability orders, guys. 136,000 population, 18.1%. Camden, you're noticing one or two London ones here. Camden is in London. 35,343. Population of 2,120. Basically nearly 250,000, 16.8%. Kensington and Chelsea, 23,000. Population 143,000. 143 at 16.5%. Hartlepool with 14,918, population of 92,000 with 16.2%. Brent there, 53,000 there. The highest here, yep, the highest amount of liability orders granted out of all of them, 53,000, with a population of 339,800 there. 15.8% of them have been granted. And Hull City there, at the bottom, 39,716, with a population of 267,000. 14.9% have been granted. So quite some huge numbers there, and you can kind of see from 1 to 10 there in the graph there of where there's their picture, guys. Not good at all. The North and Midlands have higher rates of people pursued over council debt tax, according to the graphic there. The eye analysis of the figures showed that outside London, the areas of North and Midlands with the highest level of deprivatisation disproportionately affected compared to more affluent areas in the south of England. The councils with the highest number of liability orders granted were Birmingham with 114,000, Leeds 73,000, Manchester 72,000, and Sheffield 63,000, and Bradford with 61,000. All 5 cities have council wards that rank in the 10% of the most deprived nationality. So it's the poor being made to be poorer, guys. Disgusting. In some similar authorities, the level of court action weighed against the total population is even greater. In Hindburg, one of the poorest areas of Lancashire, more than 27,000 liability orders were granted, the equivalent of more than a third of the 82,000 of people who live in the area. It's just shocking. So many liabilities, that's so many people, guys. In Middlesbrough, the figures suggest at least 20% of the population has been taken to court over the council tax debt. In contrast, only a fraction of the population has faced action over council tax debts in places such as Surrey Heath 4%, Woking 3%, and Waverley 2%. In Tunbridge Wells, Kent, just 175 people has been prosecuted out of the population of more than 115,000, guys. However, 4 of the top 10 local authorities for liability orders being granted are in London, with Westminster having granted more than 37,000, Camden more than 35,000, Kensington and Chelsea more than 23,000, and Brent with more than 53,000. It's absolutely insane. London councils also have some of the highest figures for the number of cases resulting in bailiffs being instructed, including Hillington with 55,000, Barnet with 44,000, Barking and Dagenham 39,000, and Brent 34,000 respectively. Amy Taylor, debt advisor of the chair of the Greater Manchester Money Advice Group, said the ICE figures come as no surprise at all. She says, I think with the cost of living situation, people have had to massively prioritise spending towards the things that are really going to cause a problem if they don't pay. For instance, if you don't top up your gas and electric meter, you're getting cut off. Or if you don't buy food, you're going to starve. If there's not enough money left for council tax, that will be the thing that gets left. There aren't immediate consequences. We're seeing more cases of people coming in with council debt tax along with rent and energy areas. Yeah, so when it comes to what is the most important bill priority, obviously putting food in your mouth, putting food on the table for kids and that, and just being able to keep the water going, keep the lights on, they're going to be the priority. Obviously, council tax isn't a bill, but it's not at the top of the priority when it comes to paying your bills, which is why council tax is being left on the side when it comes to paying all their bills. Obviously, if they could pay for it, they would. But we're seeing, obviously, with this cost of living, more and more people being unable to do it. And that makes total logical sense given the analysis so far. Morgan Wild, head of policy of Citizens Advice, says the cost of living crisis is still here. The growing number of people who simply don't have enough to make it to the end of the month and then are falling into debt is a huge concern. Missing just one council tax payment can have dire consequences. People who fall behind can quickly find themselves facing demands for a whole year's worth of payments, extra charges and bailiffs at the door. People on low income should be able to rely on the system designed to support them with council tax, but a postcode lottery and a reduced funding means that many aren't getting enough or any help at all. Although many people bury their heads in the sand, council tax debts can quickly become one of the most pressing concerns, Mrs. Taylor added. I would say for a lot of people, it's the council tax debts that keep them up at night, she said. You might have credit cards, but the fear with the council tax is what will come next and what will come and knock on your door. Yeah, and that's the mental health side again, guys. We've talked about mental health, haven't we, before? How that can affect you when you're worrying about being able to pay your bills. You know, the mental health side of it. That's a serious issue. Highlighting it again, guys. So what is a liability order? Well, if you don't pay your council tax bill at the first stage, you'll be sent a reminder that you should be given another 7 days to pay. If you pay out within the week, you'll face no further penalties. If you fail to pay within 7 days, or if it's the third time that you have been late for paying, the council can send you a final notice telling you to pay the full bill for the year. The average cost of council tax in 2023-2024 was $2,065. If you don't pay within 7 days of the final notice, the council can issue you a summons to appear in court. At the magistrates' courts, the council will then apply for a liability order to be granted over the debt you owe. If this is granted, it gives the council the power to instruct bailiffs to recover the debt, contact your employer or the DWP to have money deducted directly from your wages or benefits, or apply for bankruptcy. If these efforts are unsuccessful and the council still believes you have the ability to pay and are refusing, they can go ask for a further court hearing to have you sent to prison. The maximum penalty is 3 months custody. Between 2010 and 2017, nearly 700 people were sent to prison for failing to pay council tax. Yeah, pretty devastating. Mrs. Taylor says she recently helped an army veteran in his 60s who became so distressed by council tax that he was contemplating taking his own life. When I met him, he'd been hanging around train stations thinking about jumping, said Mrs. Taylor. He really was in a crisis situation and his biggest problem was council tax. When I saw him, he had a carrier bag with 45 letters from a bailiff. He hadn't opened any of them. The use of bailiffs to collect council tax debt appears to have decreased after a Stop the Knock campaign was run by charities including the Money Advice Trust in 2015. In its 2019 report, the charity said the figures had levelled off and that 4 in 10 have reduced their use of bailiffs. But figures suggest the trend is creeping back up, with at least 1.5 million cases sent for enforcement action in the past 2 years. Ms. Taylor said her experience: the clients visit by bailiffs rarely have any money or possessions and can be recovered, and the moves merely adds more debt. Once instructed by a council, bailiffs can change their own fees that need to be paid separately to the debt. By the time they are writing to you, the first fee could be £75, and then it comes to a visit, that's another £235, says Mrs. Taylor. It doesn't seem to me that councils go to using bailiffs quite quickly, and the people getting visits are generally those who have absolutely nothing. I wish they would not use bailiffs at all, but using them brings in the money for councils. No matter how badly behaved they will continue to use them. Andy MacDonald, the Labour MP for Middlesbrough, described the number of liability orders being pursued in his constituency as shocking. He told the with the cost of living crisis, food inflation and fuel prices for the unrelenting pressure on local authorities and all public services, it makes for a perfect storm, landing like a tornado on so many people who are already struggling. Yeah, people are already struggling, as you guys are aware. It's just not. Yeah, it's just not good. It seems that there isn't a week goes by without the publication of a report or statistics that emphasises yet again how the government fails in their handling of their economy, and the terrible fiscal choices it makes impact so heavily on the exposed and vulnerable of my constituents in Middlesbrough. This is a national crisis, yet the government behaves as if it's not happening. They have to act. A spokesperson for the Department of Levelling Up, Housing Communications said, "We have made it clear that councils should be sympathetic in those engendering hardship and should be proportionate in how they collect outstanding council tax. Councils operate their own local council tax support schemes tailored to help people in financial difficulties with their council tax, and depending on the scheme, this can be offered up to a 100% discount. We have announced $100 million in additional funding for local authorities to support the most vulnerable households in England, delivering on manifesto commitments to protect taxpayers from excessive cases." Claire Pete Marlin, chair of the Local Government Association Resources Board, added, "Councils know how difficult the rising cost of living is for so many people. To strive to recover unpaid taxes as sympathetic as possible. Bailiffs should only ever be used as a last resort before it gets to that stage. People will have been encouraged by their council to apply for financial support. One way to make the process easier would be to remove the requirements for the entire annual sum to become payable if an instalment is missing, giving households and councils greater flexibility. Local welfare schemes run by councils, including council tax relief and household support funds, are also available alongside targeted government help. Rising demands means this may offer short-term relief to struggling households amid an ongoing cost of living crisis and continuing funding pressures. Anyone having trouble paying their council bills should get in touch with the local authorities for financial help and advice as soon as possible." it's this is not a nice one to talk about, guys. I'm sure you guys will agree with me. It's incredibly frustrating to know that people can't. It's a catch-22. See, here's the thing, guys. Like the council needs the money to be able to fund its services, but the government has been cutting these services for decades, for the last decades. You know, the whole austerity thing, guys. You know that. And you know, the government says it's got support schemes and all that kind of thing, but I really do. I sympathise deeply with those who are struggling to make ends meet. But I also sympathise with the councils, because they're trying to keep services going, and they just don't have the money, and they're in a difficult situation, and it's very, very. I just don't know what the government needs to do more to protect them. It's easy for them to say, "Oh, we've put money in," and that kind of thing. But the blame really falls on the government here, in my opinion, because they need to do more to help them. What do you guys think the solution should be? Because I'm really struggling to think of a solution here, because I do sympathise with councils in this situation, and of course those who are struggling to make ends meet as it is. It's difficult enough as it is. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Like, share and subscribe, guys, and I will catch you guys very, very soon.